Hello, YouTube occultists. I'm Sora Luxon, and this is Lesson 22, Unbindings Part 2, I suppose. Since I told you all the really important stuff in Lesson 21, and now's a good time to fill you in on the little details that I hadn't gotten around to mentioning. If you missed Lesson 21, go back and listen to it. All the best information on how to break hexes, dissolve curses, break binding enchantments, pacify or redirect negative intentions and or energy from others, get rid of all sorts of icky baddies. All of the good important info on your first and best line of defense and offense is in lesson 21. This lesson is the specific, not nearly as profound, but still useful, detailed brass tacks sort of ritualistic stuff that you can also do. But start with Lucky 21. Start with lesson 21 and do that first. In the case of an environment that has become pervaded with bad energy, maybe this is a specific type of bad energy, like an entity that you're dealing with. Maybe not. Maybe it's a vague or generalized feeling or sense that something is wrong or off with the space, right? But if there's something emotional, entity or otherwise, sticking around where you don't want it to be, one of the best places to start is simply to do a sage or incense smudging on that space or room. Sage and incense has a powerful and profound impact on the olfactory sense, which is one of the most powerful connections to your mind, right? Your sense of smell. And it's great to use and do anyway, before or within any ritual you're doing. So go ahead and do a sage smudging, right? You light sage, you want to get smoke in all the corners, walk around the room with it. You can do the same thing with an incense of your choice, whatever incense works best for you. I make some great incenses, right? The Lux store has tons of them. But this is a good place to start because not everything requires a full-on exorcism or a full-on banishing ritual. So if it's just a matter of you walk into a space and you're not completely comfortable to begin your magical working or to begin some other ritual, or you've just never been in that space before, go ahead and sage smudge or incense smudge the room. Now, if you need more than that, if something is icky there, and a sage smudging, quick and easy, right, it's just not enough to clean it out, then what you can do is the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram. I've talked about this before in earlier lessons, aka the LBRP, right? Those are the initials, the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram. You can find this all over the internet. You can just search it. This is a ritual involving ceremonial gestures, authority word evocations, and spiritual energetic channeling. That's visualizing and emoting created and controlled magical energies that are going to be completely under your own sovereignty in order to cleanse a space, internally and externally, of any and all unwanted energy. And it's doing this by the authority of the circle and pentagram sacrosanct that's being cast and worked with. It works powerfully and immediately every single time when done correctly. And like I said, you can search it on the internet. You can find details on it all over the place, right down to people publicly pantomiming the correct gestures and vocal inflections and intonation inside of YouTube tutorials that are free, right? Or you can get yourself a copy of any book that includes a step-by-step instruction on how to perform the LBRP. I suggest the Kabbalah Magick book that I've suggested before, and I'll include a link to that with the exact title in this video's description. And I suggest this book just because I've seen so many people who are new to the craft use it and have it work amazingly well from them. It gives such a great self-starter course in high hermetic magics for anyone who's new to the great art, including where and how the lines being laid should be colored and what their carrying intention is. Whereas some other tutorials that you're going to find just give instructions and skip informing you on how those instructions are meant to be empowered, how they are meant to be done and used mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, which is the only way the LBRP is going to work. I mean, you can chant and do hand signals and signs all day, but if you're not doing them internally the right way as you're doing them externally, then nothing's going to happen. It's just you moving around sounding silly, wondering why nothing's happening, right? That's why you need that internal aspect and a good description of it and how to do it. The book is not expensive and it comes in a paperback, so you can probably order it on Amazon. But wherever you're getting this information, right, it needs to be inclusive of that internal information of how this ritual is actually functioning and not just what steps to do. Whatever you use to get that information on the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram, do take the time to then practice this ritual, right? Practice it. Be able to perform it from memory. You're not going to be sorry. It's an incredibly powerful, very useful, and easy to employ ritual. Once you have it down, it's something you're going to want to have in your magical tool belt. Now, I have a question about a metal necklace that someone wants cleansed, right? How you would go about clearing it of negative energies. As for smaller objects, right, like this necklace, that you may have received from unknown origins, anything you might have received from unknown origins that you want to use, right? So you don't know what charge it might be carrying. Or maybe a smaller object or tool that you're concerned has come into contact with a bad energetic signature that you know about, right? Or is perhaps corrupted or inhabited by an unwanted charge of some sort. You can stick those things in salt, completely covered, top to bottom, in dry salt. Submerge them in dry salt for a minimum of 3 days. 72 hours, 3 sun cycles, 3 earth days, as ridiculous as that sounds. Why 3? Because 3 is a special number. That's all I'm going to say about that. Whatever it is that you've now submerged in salt for 3 days is going to be cleared of any and all positive and negative charges. It's going to be completely returned to a baseline neutral. And because it's now in a neutral state, it will be ready for you to reinstill with the chosen attributes, vibrations that you want, or to be consecrated now that it's neutral and clear, right? It can now be consecrated to the chosen entity or deity or whatever, whichever magical working you're using this implement for. It's now prepared for that because it's been cleaned. Obviously, this isn't something that you want to do with any magical object you have that carries a beneficial effect, right? Or a beneficial or positive charge that you want to hold on to, because it will be stripped of that energy as well. Also, if the object contains water of any kind, a living flower, for instance, it's going to get dried out if you submerge it in dry salt. So obviously don't submerge something like that in dry salt unless you're okay with the effects that it's going to have on the object. And be aware that salt can both erode and oxidize certain substances of other kinds. So don't destroy anything by accident without checking if dry salt will have an external effect on it, right? I know I sound silly because this seems super obvious to most people, but I've seen people do some silly stuff. I've seen neophytes submerge some stuff in salt and have it ruined. So just be aware of what you're doing. Generally, a small steel antheme or iron object that's completely dry, a wooden magical implement or tool, metal charms, dry cloths such as altar cloths, most rocks and crystals, some amulets. These are all the sorts of things that it's usually okay to magically neutralize by covering completely with dry salt for 3 days. Sea salt works best if you have it, but iodized salt is going to work in a pinch. If you're in a hurry, right? If it's all you have, as both forms, sea salt and iodized, are forms of sodium chloride that contain a positive sodium ion bound with a negative chloride ion inside of a crystalline structure, which might not be meaningful to those who haven't gone deeply into the occult mysteries or alchemy yet. You won't know why that's the important factor here. But just remember the general rule here is something is better than nothing. when you're trying to contain and cleanse an object that's causing problems or creating havoc, right? Doing something is going to be better than doing nothing about that. So reach for the good and natural oceanic stuff if you have it, right? If you have it at the ready. But know that Mortimer's, even though it has iodine inside of it, will indeed do the trick if you haven't stocked your ritual ingredient shelves lately. Now, when it comes to uncrossings, sometimes referred to as exorcisms, banishings, unbindings, cleansings, the first thing you need to recognize and remain aware of is that such practices, these ceremonies, these rituals, apply to removing a space of unwanted influences both externally and internally. So when you're watching, say, an exorcism happen, it might be a room or a physical person that an exorcism is being conducted on, but that isn't the only space that's being cleared. It has to do with the internal space, also the internal plane of that room or that person that's being worked with, and everyone else inside of it as well. Now, that's just, keep that in mind at all times, right? That there's two levels, two existent functionalities that are occurring simultaneously during an uncrossing. One is internal and one is external. So even though you can only see the external, the internal is going on as well. Now, you're doing an exorcism and uncrossing, whether this is because somewhere or someone is perceived to be under attack of some kind, or if it's because there's a chaotic or confused, unwanted, right, vein of power that has taken up residence somewhere in someone or in something, that assault neutralizing just isn't going to work for. A living person, for instance, such as yourself, right? Or a very large space like an entire structure or a home or other building. You aren't going to be able to fully submerge either yourself or an entire building in dry salt for 3 days, right? So if icky stuff is occurring, poor health, jinxes, failing electrical equipment maybe, maledictions of all sorts, whatever, this is the time that you're now going to want to do an uncrossing ritual. If nothing thus far has worked, now you're ready to do your uncrossing. Uncrossings are most prevalent in voodoo, but they can also be found in both Wiccan and Western traditional ritualistic occult high magical traditions. In all three magical backgrounds, a working uncrossing is going to include 4 main elements in some way or another, and those are water, blessed or cleansing herbs, white candles, a pair of them, it's always two white candles, and ritual words of some kind. And yes, those 4 things are included in real Catholic exorcisms as well. If you know how to spot them, they're there, including the candles. The stuff you see in a movie isn't a real Catholic exorcism, so please, no, don't ask me any questions on that. You can go research it for yourself, right? Anyway, an unbinding or hex removal, aka uncrossing ritual, is going to require that you first step in between, past, through a pair of white candles of some kind. These can be taper, pillar. I've even seen small votive candles work pretty well. Pure beeswax, I will say, I've seen them work the best. But paraffin and soy work too. After stepping between, past, or through these 2 candles, right? You're then going to get into a ceremonial bath of some kind that has the sacred cleansing herbs in it. Now, these could have been brewed into a tea, and then the tea water is added to the bath water. It can be as simple as an actual bath of water, right? If it's you and you're doing an uncrossing on yourself, you can step between a pair of white candles and into your own bathtub in your own bathroom, right? And the herbs could be steeped or floating in the water directly. It could also be a shower where you rub these herbs onto your skin, right? And crumble them all over yourself and then rinse them off. It could be some ceremonial pouring or anointing of someone's brow with this water and these plants inside of it. Ritualistically rinsing someone's hair in a basin of herbed water. They're all the same thing. If it's an entire structure that's being cleansed and not a person, right? If it's an entire building or room that needs to be freed of unwanted forces, the herbally blessed water will be sprinkled liberally about the premises, preferably in the cardinal direction points, and then in all juxtaposed corners, and then usually also foundational stones are anointed. The idea is that the water that's been blessed and sanctified by these herbs is washing the vessel, whatever vessel, right? Whether it's a building or a person, that it's washing this vessel clear and free of all debris, all energetic junk that's built up or attached itself and isn't wanted. Now, these herbs usually include sacred thistle, rosemary, hyssop, lemongrass, holy basil, pine, spearmint. Sometimes holy basil is called priest basil. These are all commonly used, along with a few others, depending on your preferences and your magical background. Find what you can, what you feel the strongest connection to from the suggested list, and use that, right? Spearmint, rosemary, basil, these are things that are generally pretty easy to find. So then while these herbs, right, are in this water, while the ceremonial rinsing or bathing or anointing, if it's a space while the ceremonial sprinkling of the water is taking place, this is where you're going to see some type of prayer being verbally spoken. Now, if it's you doing an uncrossing on yourself, this is you speaking this prayer, right? And if it's a space, it's someone chanting or speaking a prayer as they're clearing the space. In the Wiccan traditions, this spell work, this prayer, is usually a repeated rhyme that's very short, and there are tons of them. One of the simplest and oldest, it's very easy to remember, is one sentence: if I have been cursed today, let water wash the hex away. And it's just that short, it's just that sweet and simple. And then this is repeated as the person is washing themselves, right? Or rinsing themselves off in a shower, or as they're sprinkling a space. And these words can be adjusted as needed, but you always need to hold on to the rhyming aspect here. So if the words are changed, they need to be changed to still rhyme. And then repeated until the person using this ritual, right, whoever's doing the ritual, senses that the negative energetic force or unwanted malediction has been completely washed away, right? That's the really important thing here. Your mindset, after all, is an absolutely necessary part of this ceremony. Whether you're the one doing the ritual for someone or something else, or you're the one doing it on yourself, your mindset is fundamental. Your spiritual energy is fundamental here. So you're going to repeat whatever incantation you've chosen until you can feel the negative departing, until you can sense it leaving and being replaced by a calm, relaxed, positive, or non-influenced emotional state, right? A state that's free from any fearful or stressed feelings or thoughts. And a calmness, right? A goodness, a positivity should now absorb and pervade the physical and spiritual self. And that's how you know that's also absorbed and pervaded the physical and spiritual planes that you're trying to clear, right? While it's forcing the bad out, now the good has pervaded and come in. In a Voodoo, Catholic uncrossing, because Voodoo has a lot of Catholicism in it. In a Voodoo ritual, the person who's partaking in the ceremonial cleansing, say the person who's lying in the herbal bath water, is going to usually read biblical psalms, right? And then repeat them. These usually include Psalm 51 or Psalm 37 or both. others that seem powerful or profound to that person or to the person conducting the ritual. And then often also a chosen prayer to either a saint or ancestor for intervention and assistance, right? This person is now asking an ancestor or asking a Catholic saint for their aid in removing whatever affliction or presence is unwanted. Whether the unwanted energetic influence is actual or psychological, this makes no difference. A ritual uncrossing will produce the desired effect. It will remove the unwanted energetic influence every time if it's done correctly. Although you do have to keep in mind that for this type of uncrossing, this bathing herbal, 2 candles being stepped between, right? For this type of uncrossing exorcism to work best, it has to be done for 7 days in a row, preferably at the same time each day. And you let the candles burn for the same amount of time while you're in that water, while that person's in that water each day. So 7 days consecutively at the same time each day for the same amount of time each day within that week, within that 7-day period. Some ceremonial magicians will use special oils after this, right? Anointing oils, sacred oils, magical oils. And these are usually used while someone's repeating the psalms, the prayers, or the magical spell incantations of their choice. After they've stepped out of the water, or their hair has been rinsed, or they've been anointed, or they've stepped out of the shower, or the room has already been sprinkled, now you have the anointing of oils. If you have sacred, blessed, or anointing oils, right, for cleansing, banishing, or uncrossing oils, if you have that tool at your disposal, made in the traditional ancient way, right, you're going to need olive oil that's been infused with myrrh and other specific ingredients. Cool. Use that. It's only going to strengthen the magical work that you're doing. If you don't have it, don't worry about it. The really important elements are the candles, water, spoken word, and you. You are the most important element of this ceremony. Your mental and spiritual self is the real key to this lovely cleansing ritual, because that's what you're doing. You're washing the icky, gross, whatever the heck it is that you're trying to get rid of, right? You're washing it away while blissfully enjoying the respite and emotional and psychological purification that this ritual is going to give you or space or someone else refuge in. And then, so now you've rinsed, washed, bathed, sprinkled, whatever, right? Then you're going to step out of the bath or shower and drip dry. Or if it's a space that you sprinkled with water, right, you're going to allow that to sun dry. You're going to allow it to evaporate off of the floorboards back into being magically free of all that nastiness, right? So back into being your wonderful magical self, or this person that's now been cleansed is now their wonderful self again, or the space, right, as that moisture evaporates is now returned to its best state, right, free of all negative influence. Also, I feel like I should really mention that you always need to remember to appropriately clean the environment that's used for a ritual or ceremony, especially an uncrossing or exorcism like this. After you've used it, even if it's your bathtub, right? So all the water's now drained out of the tub, and say you've got clumps of herbs sitting on the bottom of the bathtub left behind, right? Those things that you've used for a ceremony, after the ceremony is over, you need to dispose of them correctly. Do not just throw them in your trash can, right? These are things that can hold on to negative energy. So you're going to want to take them outside and dispose of them far away from your own home, if this is where you've done the ceremony, far away from your temple or your spiritual space or room. You're going to need to take whatever implements you need to get rid of after a ceremony is over and take them away, make sure they're fully destroyed, bury them, burn them, whatever. But don't keep them around, and dispose of them correctly. And now the environment that's left behind, say you've used your own shower, right? Your own bathroom. Lysol it, bleach it, If you're into naturalistic sanitization, right? Get a nice barrel of lemons, juice them, and use, lemon juice and salt, vinegar. Whatever it is that you do to clean, right? Go ahead and do it. You're going to clean and sanitize any space that's been used for this ceremony, for this exorcism ritual. Always. Now, there are candles and other elements like photos, offerings, right, that are necessary if you're invoking ancestral spirits or guides or lines, written signature intent letters that are sometimes used. You can use these things, right, to add detail and specify outcomes in a very clear and a very dictated way, right, that you might want to have applied to a cleansing or banishing, right? Maybe you think it's a specific person, right, that's done something to you, and so you're going to use a photo of them in order to help complete the uncrossing, complete the banishing. But you can figure out those things as needed, and they aren't strictly necessary to perform a very powerful and useful uncrossing ceremony. So there you go. You have the LBRP banishing, and I'll include that link to the book I prefer, but you can also just search it online. You have that ceremony at your disposal. You have salt purification for small objects that you feel might be carrying a negative or unwanted charge. And you have a fully explained exorcising ritual that you can now use if necessary, right? Keep your environment and your mind clean. That's Occult 101. And then, remember lesson 21, Lucky 21, consider your outlook, your perspective, and laughter. Consider the amazing, great, high craft, high art tool of laughter. And then, if absolutely necessary, you can resort to these magical practices, these magical rituals and ceremonies as needed in order to tidy up energetically. Until next time.